Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our fifth Athlete to Entrepreneur panel. It's your boy Taj Deshawn. I say this is our fifth Athlete to Entrepreneur panel because we don't plan on stopping anytime soon. And so the pleasure to have you here with us as usual on a Saturday. You could be anywhere else in the world, but you're here with us. I'm really excited to kick this thing off first with someone who has become like a big brother to me over these past few months. I'm quickly going to read you his bio, and then we'll get right into this thing. Thomas Williams is an author, a speaker, a philanthropist, and an NFL player engagement ambassador. He's also an adjunct professor at USC. Thomas works with athletes, students, and professionals, challenging them to push beyond a mundane lifestyle and enter into a lifestyle of greatness. In 2008, after playing for USC, Thomas was drafted by the Jacksonville Jaguars. He went on to play for the Patriots, the Bills, and the Carolina Panthers. Thomas's passion for helping college student athletes see beyond the scoreboard comes from his personal journey as he transitioned from a successful football career to fulfilling his life's purpose, motivating and encouraging others in transition. He wants to instill in every student the understanding that greatness does not exist in the jersey, greatness exists in the athlete. Please welcome to Athlete to Entrepreneur, Mr. Thomas R. Williams. All right, folks. No Thomas yet. Not a problem. I know we got Jori in the building. So I'll introduce Jori first. We'll get it started, and then we'll talk to Thomas next. Jori Davis. I love Jori because we connected totally by accident, which I'm sure we'll get into. But Jori Davis is a New Orleans native who's played professional basketball in 6 different countries. She's now in her 10th professional season, currently playing in Athens, Greece. She completed a standout career at Indiana University as a 10th all-time leading scorer at the university and was drafted 33rd overall by the Indiana Fever in the 2011 WNBA draft. Jori is currently working on creating WeVolve, a members-only decentralized platform for global elite athletes that will enable them to manage their careers and lifestyle. She is dedicated to empowering athletes to own their legacy on and off the playing field and gain more control as a collective. Please welcome to Athlete to Entrepreneur, Ms. Jori Davis.
Hey, what's going on?
Jori, what's going on? Live from
Nothing
Athens,
much.
Greece.
Yeah, we all the way across the pond here in Athens.
That's what
So,
I'm talking about.
how you been?
I've been great. I'm happy to have you here. I know you and I have been working on some things behind the scenes recently, but this is all about you today. I just want people to hear your journey, hear themselves and your journey to be able to understand, especially as a current athlete. Like you're in your 10th year, you're not even done playing
Yeah.
yet, and you're building something that's major and you're just getting started. So, with that being said, I mean, can you please just talk to everyone what it's like, why even start WeVolve in the first place? How was the idea
hmm
born, and how did you know it was time to start mapping out a plan to bring it to life?
hmm I mean, my story is just kind of like a lot of other entrepreneurs. It started with my own struggle, and it just started from a place of really um, being overseas and seeing the lack of community, seeing the lack of resources, and seeing just how in the whole landscape of the sport industry really hasn't been revolutionized, but our complaints and our yelling as athletes and our voices constantly were saying like we want more, we need something different. Um, and I think it just came from a place of that downtime. Like I was going through a tough period, and that's the beauty of those tough times because during tough times is where you start to really think and remove yourself from the situation. And that's where the mission and the passion for Wevolve came. But then over time, when it came to how do I solve a problem, how do I make it a business, that evolved and it continues to evolve. But Wevolve came about basically from my personal mantra, willingly evolving. And it was kind of like I just can't evolve alone. Like we all need to evolve. And that's where the name came. And it all started from a place of wanting and longing, truthfully, for community, but community that actually supports, holds everyone accountable, and we constantly, grow together. And that's just, I think that came from growing up in New Orleans. Like I grew up on the street with everybody, so I started to define that I had that at a young age, that real community, that close knit family. And I think going abroad it kind of like over time, I realized like that's something that I would love to see happen within the sports landscape, especially for athletes.
Right. And can you dive into some of those challenges as an overseas professional basketball player? Because I've even heard you refer to that community specifically as like the forgotten community or the lost community
Mm-hmm.
of overseas basketball players. What are some of the challenges? Because as in the States, we just hear stories, oh, I lived overseas for X
Mm-hmm.
amount of years. We don't really know what goes on behind the scenes. What are some of the challenges that you're helping that you're looking to help solve through Evolve?
Mm-hmm. I think definitely there's a lack of knowledge and data that the athletes have access to. There a lot of like salaries aren't public knowledge. So when it comes to the business side, we don't really have a lot of resources to actually like promote or even better represent ourselves or our cases. So that's one thing. But when it comes to more of a community based thing, a lot of athletes deal with that isolation. I think the mental health aspect of being far removed from home, on top of dealing with the pressures to perform, on top of dealing with the one-off contracts, which adds another layer of pressure and competition, and that all of that mixed in, plus being in foreign land, can be difficult. And it's not just the Americans; it's also the Europeans. A lot of them are starting their careers with the lack of resources. We come over from being really coddled in college to now not having these resources. So for me, it's a number of things that's lacking. Whereas stateside, the topic of mental health, the topic of women empowerment, all these things are like growing tremendously. But in Europe, women in sport, that's not a big topic. Mental health is not a big topic. And I feel like that's what's lacking, and it's not just Americans, it's all of the whole community abroad. And I definitely want to be an advocate for all of us, not just the Americans, but me personally definitely went through just broken relationships, feeling, the little bit of depression that I face. Confidence is tough to maintain, because you're constantly being rated with these one-off contracts. You never know when you're going to leave. You never know when you're going to be cut. Makes you insecure at times. So it's just so much that the need for community and support is huge.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing, Jori. I really love that you're building, like every time I talk to you, it always comes down to that word, as you just said, which is community, right? I know
Mm-hmm.
that's the mission behind what you're building. I know that even from the start, right out the gate, that was your mission, is of course addressing all those areas that you just discussed, but the main thing is addressing them as a community, and that's what's so great
Mm-hmm.
about it. Um, you're essentially starting a tech company, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always curious to know, because I know nothing about that space at all. Like, what
Yeah.
actually goes into building a technology platform? Where does one even get started if they're thinking about entering that
Mm-hmm.
space?
Look, I don't know either at the beginning, like the truth is, like, you start, as they say, you start with a pain point, and then you start to figure out what's the solution. One of the biggest things that I've done is I've looked into other industries, and I saw how technology was reinventing and disrupting those industries. And when I looked at our industry in sport and how business is done and how we even communicate amongst one another, it feels like we still back in the day, old school. We're still like randomly finding people and like, oh, you were right down the street. It's like, look, it's 2021. Like, why are we? So for me, had no idea. It all started with just, look, I knew these things needed to happen. Now, how do we make this happen efficiently? And that's where it became technology and how we can implement that. And I think, again, when it starts with anything around technology and there's algorithms and all these other things, you have to remember to just start with the basic, what do you want to happen? Technology just makes whatever you do as a human to human interaction, that just makes it more efficient and speeds it up. That doesn't mean technology is something that doesn't, is going to just change everything. So for me, it wasn't that, oh, where is the technology? It was more so, what do I want to do? What actions need to happen? And then you see and learn how tech can streamline that. And so that was really it. And then, the next thing was just seeking out those people that have that knowledge. and just really educating yourself. And I'm constantly educating myself. Like, we have a long way to go. So, I mean, staying curious is the biggest thing, and finding the right people who are smarter than you in that space, truthfully, who believe in the mission.
I love that you talked about constantly educating yourself, right? And this is why we're here, right? We're talking about going from being an athlete to an entrepreneur. You're doing both right now. You're wearing two hats, which is impressive. And the fact that a lot of times we overlook the fact that as athletes we have to constantly be up in our game, finding different ways to train, making sure our diets, taking better care of our sleep, like checking all the boxes. And so I love that while still in your professional career, you've been able to utilize those same things to build in your entrepreneurial side and learn to seek out people, get mentorship, get coaching, be a student, being a student of life. That's something I always talk about. And I love that you're doing that. And one of the questions I wanted to ask you too is, like, how do you balance it, right? How do you balance, because it's not one of those things where, oh, this is just my little side hustle and I do this whenever I have time after games or in between practices. Like, you are full speed ahead. You're making me look bad because I'm not in a professional career right now, but you are full speed ahead building this thing out. So what is the balance like?
It's tough, man. Like, seriously, Taj, it's not easy because we already know that doing anything outside of sport, to those that rely on us from a business standpoint to perform, is not, they don't want you out here trying to do all these other things. They want you to stay in one lane. And so you're trying to balance making sure you show up to practices and show up to this career and let them know you're not missing a step. And then you're trying to show up as you build a team of people to say, can she do this? She's playing, and like, is this just a joke or is this real? And so now you're trying to show up to this stage and make sure everybody that's believing in what you're saying, they see you pulling up and they see you taking the lead. And so you're trying to take the lead in two different arenas. And it is a lot. And I'm learning still a lot how to balance it. I'm learning just project management, learning how to manage my calendar. Like, there's so much that we don't see until we start to get into these things. And that's why I think it's so important to transition while you're playing, because you see those things you're lacking at. You see those missed layups. You see those, the missed passes, because you're like, man, someone else was doing this for me. Someone else was balancing my calendar. Someone else was thinking strategically for me. And all I had to do was focus on playing. So balancing everything, it comes down to really learning how to manage your time and learning how to manage yourself as well, because we've been micromanaged, like, get up, stretch, you got this, y'all eat breakfast, you do this. Someone else has been creating your life, and now you're trying to create your life, and that's not easy. And I think there's no real answer to how to balance it. It's just, you got to roll up your sleeves the same way you figured out how to play that game you love, and just start to, again, it's back to learning and being a student and figuring it out as you go. And hopefully you build a team of people that are gonna kind of like make sure they cover your health side. Like, right. Hey, back door, I'm beat, help.
Right.
So yeah, that's just kind of how it is.
Right. And then, speaking of building a team around you, I know, because we touched on attracting people or studying people or bringing in people who can guide you and mentor you. What is the process like of assembling a team around you? Obviously there's a lot of correlation between that and playing your sport, but how do you know? Because at first, obviously, you're doing everything yourself, right? And that's one of the great things about you too. Not only are you building WeEvolve, and obviously WeEvolve is an extension of you, but I mean, you do a lot already on top of the professional career too. You've told me time and time again, like, if I'm talking to someone who, like the woman I referred, India, right? Who's she's about to enter a professional career. You're like, oh, Taj, send her my way. I can give her some advice on, looking for agents and stuff like that. So you got the company, you got the team, but you got things that you're doing by yourself. With all that going on, how are you like, okay, now I need to hire for this, I need to hire for that, I need to build this type of team around me? What is that process like to identify those people?
For me, it's when it comes to hiring processes, like I have not reached that point. For me, when it comes to building a team around me, it's all truthfully human value based. That's where I start. And, it's about really taking my time with it as well and watching how people move, what they say, and how they move. And do our values match up? And giving them time to also realize, look, this is what we're trying to build, and this is the time it's gonna take. Are you willing to be here for the whole season? Like preseason, are you gonna be here for the whole time for this long journey? And so for me, truthfully, it's not about what their skills are. One of the things is that I love truth. I value truth, even if sometimes it hurts my feelings. I value that, and that's one thing I look for when I'm deciding if I'm going to really add someone to the ecosystem of Wevolve. The other thing is I value people that have creative minds and are willing to speak their mind when it comes to different things. And so I definitely enjoy that. And then those that have a heart and a real soul for a community and understanding what it means to give a little less of yourself to gain more for the collective. And definitely the fourth one, definitely having someone or individuals that believe no matter what athletes might be a little lazy at times, or we coddled, or we already have enough, that look, there's still room to enhance the experience. There's still room to share those stories. And those are kind of the four things that I look for when I'm looking like, hey, you want to join Wevolve, you want to be a part of, let's collaborate. Because before anything else starts to happen as we grow, you got to get those core people that really believe in those values and that going to tell you the truth, and they're going to believe in the mission. Because without that, like, they could be the smartest people, but those little things will make all of that be null and void.
Right. Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of this quote, or maybe just a meme that I saw or something, where it said people buy into the leader before they buy into the vision. And that really makes me think of you, because just a little backstory, I first found out about what you were doing and building with Wevolve from Joy Walker's podcast, Sets for Life. Shout out to Joy Walker. So I was listening to her interview you, and I'm like, this is dope. And I could tell not only what you were building, because there's a lot of people talking about building things, but who you were as a person and the heart behind it is what had me be like, I'm going to reach out to Jori. I don't know what this is going to lead to, but I want to make this connection. So when I'm hearing you talk about the people who are willing to sacrifice and contribute to the mission before there's financial reward, right? Because everybody wants the money up front without realizing how you
they do.
Right. Everybody, well, how much am I going to get paid to be a part of Wevolve? Like, wait a minute, you're missing the bigger picture, right? And so I love that you touched on that. It's about identifying the right people and attracting those people by who you're being and the messages that you're continuing to share. So I want to, you kind of touched on it at the very beginning, but I like to just zoom out for people who, they're gonna have their eyes and ears open for Wevolve down the line. They want to be a part of it. What are all the moving parts of the ecosystem that you're creating?
Well, in a sense, Wevolve, the ecosystem is basically to create a self-reliant tool for the athlete. We want to bring all the moving parts of the industry to the athlete so that they may better manage and control their career and just feel more empowered. And so there are those that service the athlete, which again, we like to focus on athlete entrepreneurs with smaller businesses that service those athletes. That's who we definitely empower, and that's who we're loyal to first, above all. And so whether it be financial advisors, mental coaches, consultants, we want to seek out those individuals that did play and are now servicing them, because we believe they can be mentors on top of offering these services. So that's one piece. Mentorship is huge for us. And then the other two pillars we have is player empowerment and social and lifestyle. And with that player empowerment, that ecosystem is more so, again, the tools, assembling those tools that will help them better manage themselves without relying 100% on the other industry leaders that we've been accustomed to letting them manage all these things. And then social lifestyle is really just us not missing a beat, not missing the OG that's living right in the corner now that maybe they played 10 years ago. We don't see them on ESPN anymore, but they have a wealth of knowledge. We don't want anyone to miss those people, but at the same time, we also don't want to miss, for example, Darius Willis was in Switzerland. I was playing in Switzerland. We both played at IU at the same time. We used to hang out and go kick it at IU. And this man is playing football professionally in Switzerland, and I'm there. We don't want to miss out on the beauty of what we could have cultivated if there was something in place. So those three pillars, player empowerment, social lifestyle, and mentorship, that makes up the ecosystem of Wevolve in a more intuitive and streamlined way. And then from there, that ecosystem is more so really validating and holding all the other people accountable, including ourselves.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing, Jori. I love that. I think sometimes we get so caught up on trying to connect with people everywhere that we forget, like you said, about the people who are right down the street or who are in our network, right? Who went to our university or, might be in the same city. And I love that. Once again, it comes back down to community. And I really love that you're putting so much emphasis on that because, of course, you're surrounding the people who need the services, who need the support through Wevolve. You're surrounding them with all these different things so that they know they can lean on other people. But there's a lot of it that just, I think there's a peace of mind that comes with knowing that you got people there who are in your corner, right? For anything, even if it's just you need to talk to somebody, like I was saying earlier, you offered to have a conversation with a woman that I'm coaching right now and guide her through everything she's going through. So I think that's a beautiful thing. And I feel like I know you're just getting started and you've accomplished so much already, but I'm really curious to know, like, what is the next, I don't want to say milestone, because I know it's a process, it's a journey, but like, what is the next thing you're looking forward to with Wevolve? What's the next big step, the next mountaintop you're looking to climb?
Yeah, the next milestone for us is really just getting our core tribe onto the MVP prototype and just really seeing what they're going to say, what's their feedback, and kind of going and starting from there. 2021, we want to have that released in a better phase so we can really start to just take action. It's been, when you talk about balance, man, like sometimes you feel like you're moving like a snail. And you're like, play like a time, definitely we are ready to get that out there to the world. The next thing, for me, is really taking more action from an advocacy standpoint. And so putting some true action behind, like, hey, we need things to change. And so what that looks like completely, I'm learning, trying to figure it out, whether it be an initial petition or something to make conditions better for us to start the train going for making things better for athletes abroad. And so that would be one. And then the third one would definitely be taking the storytelling about the lost community to another level, and really finding individuals, whether it be sponsors or whatever, that's interested in the Wevolve team tell those stories, because we believe it's a unique lifestyle story that hasn't been really told, and isn't in the mainstream. And we're passionate about getting it out there so it can lead to more.
And speaking of telling those stories, I know that you started a podcast. You started it last year, right? Or was it 2019?
Yeah, Unguarded podcast presented by Wevolve. Really just sharing our truths, our struggles, ups, downs, lows, everything about the overseas journey. And we focus on stories. We have a few European athletes, but we're definitely looking to even expand and tell the European story a lot more as well, because there's a lot that they're lacking a little bit more than us as Americans. At times, like we're complaining, but we're spoiled when it comes to them as well. So, the podcast has just been one-on-one interviews with all players that have played overseas, and just really diving deeper, getting unguarded about our struggles and things we deal with as humans, not so much on the court.
Yeah, I've had the chance to listen to several episodes. I got to catch up. I'm a little behind, but please believe I will catch up. And
Yeah.
one of the things, to your point, I like that you are interviewing the overseas players as well, because what
Mhm.
that does is, just like you said, it creates a level of gratitude for the players who are coming from the U.S. going over there. Because at the end of the day, a lot of players who are based in the U.S. and go play overseas, they know they can just make a quick call back home if they need some funds or whatever that looks like. Not so
Right.
much the case for players overseas, and I've heard people talk about that on your podcast. So I really like that you're bringing that to the table. A question that I have to ask you, I don't think I've asked you this offline yet, so it would be great to ask you right now. What do you want the legacy of
Yeah.
Jori Davis to be?
Man, look, the legacy of Jori Davis is really being built. But when I look at and I'm learning, there's so many advocates that have been not only just for the Black community but also for athletes. But the legacy I want to leave is that I was just a part. I was a key part of really getting the community to level up. The legacy is that I bridged gaps between dope souls. I bridged gaps between individuals that maybe would have never connected if I didn't be the one to put myself out there and say, hey, I see something that needs to be connected. I want to definitely make sure that part of my legacy is that my family and everyone was proud of the impact I left, especially when it comes to uh, how I grew up and how I was raised around our faith, and always, being told that like no matter what this world may be doing, and constantly is going to be a lot of pain, suffering, but you're always going to have to be that light. And you might have your hard times, but it's important to always remember that that light is needed. Someone needs that a little bit more. And so my legacy is not something to be the biggest company of Revolve or nothing, man. Like I just want to be a bridge. I want to be a connector, and I want to do something that helps someone else and is going to continue to help someone else when I'm long gone. And that's what I want my legacy to be. And I probably will never see it. Who knows? But hey, that's my ticket when my soul moves on from this earth. You know what I'm saying? So definitely just working towards that ticket, as the old folks say.
That's right. Yeah. I love that question, and I love your answer so much, because as I'm hearing you say all those things, like you said, your legacy is still being built. At the same
Mm-hmm.
time, Jory, everything you just laid out, you're already doing it. You know what I mean? You've
Mm-hmm.
already done it. And you're still playing professional ball. So
Yeah.
once you're done, like it's gonna be crazy to watch. Like I feel like it's gonna be a quantum leap for Weevolve once you just
Mm-hmm.
have that time freed up and you can pour,
Mm-hmm.
put 24/7 into that. That's when I
Right.
really feel. I mean, it's already taken off now, but I feel like just the impact that you visualize, everything you just said, once you officially retire, you probably got 10 more years in you, let's be real. But
Nah, 10 now. No, I might need the
right.
Tiger Bomb in the Bengay.
Your knees started screaming when I said 2 years.
Yes, yes.
But my point is that I just feel like, once you're officially done playing ball, that's when the vision that you just articulated, that's when it's really going to take off. And you really are that light. The word luminary is something that I heard it somewhere, and I just been using that a lot. Like you're a luminary, you're a light at the end of the tunnel. You're a light in the tunnel for people, and that's a
Right.
beautiful thing. So before we
Appreciate
wrap
that.
up, absolutely. And thank you for coming on and sharing. Please tell people how they can get in touch, how they can support Weevolve, how can they follow the journey of Jori Davis?
Yeah. So first of all, you can follow me on Twitter. I am Jori Davis. Instagram, Jori Davis 32. You can follow Weevolve Society on IG. You can connect with us, info@weevolve.net or Jori@weevolve.net. You can also go to the weevolve.net website. And if you would like to collab or connect with us, just click the build with us link, fill out the information. And also the link in bio on the Weave Off Society IG account and also Twitter. You can also connect with us via those platforms. It is a exclusive ecosystem that we're building, and we are trying to really vet and validate those that we're slowly building with. But we definitely would love to support also with the podcast Unguarded that is on Spotify, Anchor, all podcasting platforms. Just listen in, and how you can also support Wevolve. Those you see that we post that are in the community and network already, support them, because the more they elevate, the more Wevolve elevates. And yeah, that's kind of it right now. And just stay tuned.
That's right. Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
One more thing before I let you go. I love how you talked about the vetting process, right? Because if you're gonna give your players access, or the people who are part of Wevolve, give them access to certain services or certain people who can help and guide them. I love the fact that you are really being intentional about vetting them out first. You're not just letting anybody and everybody come in the door and say, "Hey, I do this, I do that." But like, you got to get your background check in first before you officially get your Wevolve stamp. So I love that you're doing that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke to a few people that private networks and stuff has been talked about before amongst athletes, more higher end athletes. And I think one of the key things is that we have to stay, that's our value. Like, we have to stay solid in that. If we miss out from a political standpoint on things, we miss out. But we believe over time that's going to be valuable to the athletes and building their trust and knowing that this is what we stand for here. And that, they're going to be presented with the best options based on everything they're trying to accomplish with their careers and lifestyle. So
that's right. I love that approach. I love that mentality. Jori, I love what you're doing. We could talk for another hour, but I want to be respectful of your time. I know it's getting late out there in Greece. So I'm going to let you go. Thank you for coming on and sharing, and I'll talk to you very soon.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Taj. Love what you're doing. Love what you're building. And we're gonna keep going together, man. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Let's do it.
All right.
Bye, Jori.
Peace.
Peace. All right, Dan, before I go into the next guest, do we have Thomas on board? I might need to resend him the link. Let's see what we got. Please hold, folks. Okay. All right, everybody, please be patient with me. I'm going to need to do something real quick. Hopefully you can still hear me. I am going to need to resend Thomas the link to get on here. Oops, my bad. We're back, everybody. I had to send Thomas the link real quick. I messed around and closed myself out. So I don't know what the last thing you heard me say was, if you're listening to this right now. But one of the things that I love the most about Jori is that she was touching on community, because something that it took me a while to learn, especially as an athlete. And it's funny how we go from, being a part of this tight-knit group to now I'm out in the real world trying to map out my next steps, trying to figure out who I'm going to be, what I'm going to do. And a lot of us, we go into solo dolo mode, meaning like I have to figure this out all by myself, and I think that if we can really learn to lean into community, especially a community of former athletes, right? Not that you can't get help from other people. I encourage getting help from people who are non-athletes or not part of the athletic community. But the reason I say reaching out to other athletes and former athletes is because who's going to really understand what you've been through more than someone who's actually been through it themselves, or who's going through what you've been through? You know what I mean? So while we're waiting for Thomas to come on board, I want to invite anyone to ask questions. I know a lot of people on here may be former athletes. I know some of you may have family members that are former or current athletes who maybe had their seasons canceled at the high school level, at the college level. If you have any questions, you want to drop something in the chat, go ahead. Please feel free to do that. And another thing, just to touch on what Jori said, there are a lot of people who, it may not be evident right now, but there are a lot of people who are suffering in silence right now. Like I just said, a lot of seasons were canceled. I have these conversations every single day with former athletes who reach out and they want to talk. They may not even need some coaching. They may not even need to do like a full program. Sometimes they just need to have a conversation with someone because they feel like no one really understands what they're going through, and that was me for a long time. And obviously, after opening up and getting some help and getting some guidance from great people to be able to take me to the next level, eventually I built myself up to the point where, excuse me, let me not say I built myself up. I was built up by people and connected with people who helped elevate me mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally, financially. And where I'm at now, the reason we even have these athletes entrepreneur events is because I want to show that not only can you make it through the other side of your transition, but you can build out your own lane. You can essentially create whatever you want to create in this life. And that's why we're bringing people to the table who have great stories, who are doing great things out in the world. So you can see, you don't just have to settle for, whatever job you get after you're done playing. You can create something. Jori is building something while she's already playing. She's not even done with her career yet, and she's still building something. So, oh, let me see what we got here. Give me 1 second, guys. Give me 1 second. Okay, Dana, do we have Jodi on board? Okay. All right, you guys. Let me make sure I'm still on here, first of all. All right, you guys, give me about 30 seconds to reach out to Jodi, and we'll get Jodi on here in just a second. Okay. All right, cool. All right, so we're going to wait for Jodi to jump on here. And folks, first of all, I just want to let you know, I appreciate you being here. Thank you for being patient with us. I think there's always something, right? But at the end of the day, you got to keep rolling. Last time the signal was so bad that we could barely even understand what anyone was saying, but we kept it pushing, right? My signal was so bad last time you couldn't even hear what I was saying if you tuned into the one last month. But at the end of the day, we're here to share. We're here to make sure that people get what they need out of this. So I'm going to sit here until Jodi pops up. It is what it is. And Jodi. Okay, then. Let's do this. I need to figure out where Thomas is. So I'm going to jump off for a second and then call Jodi and Thomas, and then we're going to jump back on because I really want to interview them. And I know we only have a certain amount of time left. Okay. We'll be back, folks. Keep your browser open. What's up, beautiful people? We're back at it. As soon as we have confirmation that Jodi's on, I'll go ahead and introduce her. Thank you all for being patient with us. We had a mix up with the schedule, but we have to get Jodi on here for you guys to hear from her. So give me 1 quick second. All right, Jodi's here. I'm excited. All right, I'm going to give Jodi a quick intro, and then we'll get into her story. So basketball has been a huge part of Jodi's life. Not only was she a player and an athletic trainer, she also coached basketball for 14 years and helped lead the SFA Lady Jacks to not one, but 2 conference championships. Today, Jodi is a health coach, motivational speaker, and an author. We'll just leave it at that. We'll leave it at that for a second because I want you to hear from Jodi herself. So please welcome the athlete to entrepreneur, Jodi Greve.
What's going on?
Jodi, what's going on?
How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for making the adjustment. That comes from your days as a coach and as a baller. Thank you for making the adjustment to get on here ahead of time and share with the people. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Look, I really believe life is all about making adjustments and monitor and adjust. So
That's right. Well, definitely appreciate you. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. We've been talking about getting you on this athlete to entrepreneur panel because you are the prime example of going from athlete to entrepreneur. And I know that I just want to pick it up right here. I'm going to let you tell the story, but 14 years as a coach, 2 championships, and you decided to take a leap into entrepreneurship. So my question is, during that process, how did you know it was time to take the leap? And how did you know what you were going to do when you took the leap?
So to answer the first question, as far as how did I know, I firmly believe that no matter what line of work you are in, that it should not feel like the majority of it should not feel like work. Okay, there's going to be parts to your job and everything. Yes, it's, paperwork. Who wants to fill out paperwork? Nobody. There's going to be little tidbits and stuff, that's going to be work, but the majority of it should not feel that way. And the 2 years prior to me getting out of coaching, there was some important stuff, aspects to my job that were starting to feel like work. And that scared me because I absolutely love basketball. I love coaching, and I love the relationships that I have with my players. And I saw a lot of coaches who were in the business forever, and they should have gotten out 20 years ago. And they were bitter. They were miserable to be around. I mean, they were just grumpy. Like, we'd see them on the road in July recruiting, and they just didn't look pleasant to be around. And I did not want to become that person. So when 2015 hit, right after conference tournaments, it's Black Monday. It's usually when, coaching changes and stuff happens. And at the time, the head coach at Kansas had gotten fired. And I just knew that my head coach was going to end up getting the job, even though he didn't actually get it for another 6 weeks. College athletics, those jobs usually get, filled pretty quick. But he didn't get it for another 6, but I knew he was going to get it because of all of his connections with Kansas. He had won a national championship at a Division II school up there. And I just knew it. And so I had to start evaluating what I was going to do. If I could go up there with him, would I go? Was I going to go try and work for somebody else? What if he couldn't take me? What if I stayed where I was at Stephen F. Austin? And a lot of that just did not sound exciting. Like there was a weight on it. And I really don't know exactly what that was. But I just knew it wasn't the best feeling. And I'm one of those, like, I go with my gut. It might take me a little while to, for my gut to convince me, but I just knew that it didn't seem right for me. And he was an amazing person to work with. And the reason I stayed those other 2 years is because I loved our players. I loved the staff I worked with. I mean, that's why we won 2 championships there, because we had good people, not just good players, but we had good people within our program. And it made it too hard to leave. But with that transitioning happening, I just took a second look and I was like, all right, I'm going to get out of coaching. And when I walked into his office to tell him that, he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I have no idea." I had no clue. I did not. And, as far as like my road to being an entrepreneur, it was an accident. I look up and all of a sudden people are calling me an entrepreneur. I'm like, who are you talking about? Like, that's not me, but it's the best, I am. And I ended up, once I had told him, he told his wife, and he was like, I'm going to talk to her about it, because she works for a health and wellness company. And I had already been taking these fruits and vegetables in a capsule. And I've been taking those for 5 years. I knew what it did. I knew what it did for me. And everybody in the world needs more fruits and vegetables in their life. So I decided to join the business with her and became a health coach. And then all of a sudden I became an author, and now I'm a speaker, and hey, here I am, an entrepreneur.
So it's almost like you took the leap and the journey unfolded itself, right?
Yep.
Okay. See, I love stories like that too, because that's very similar to my story, right? And something that you said at the very beginning that I really liked is that you were looking at other people to see what not to do. Like, you knew you didn't want to do that. And I think that that's an overlooked, I don't want to call it like a trait, I guess, an overlooked thing that needs to be talked about, because you can learn just as much by looking at what you don't want to do or where you don't want to be. So I love that you touched on that. And whether that's, people who are actually in your role or family members, like I learned from watching my mom and dad. Hopefully they're not watching right now that, hey, when I talk about this, but I love y'all, okay? They provided a great life for my brother and I, right? They really worked hard. But both of them, at the end of the day, their job was strictly just for money. So that leaves you in a place where you come home exhausted, might need a glass of wine or something. And, there's nothing wrong with that. They come from a different era too. They didn't have the internet like I do to be able to build something.
Right.
But seeing that example, let me know that I don't want to do something strictly just for money. There has to be a deeper purpose behind it. And also, whenever I was in a role where I was working just for money, I would look at the people around me, to your point, and be like, my boss or my manager looks miserable. So I'm here working to be in their shoes 5 to 10 years from now. That doesn't make any sense. I got to figure something out. You talked about this weight, like when you're, it's like your gut instinct, right? When you're in a position and you're doing something and you know it's not it. There are a lot of people who feel that weight, but I guess they don't listen to it. They don't listen to their gut. Like, what advice can you give to people in that situation? Number one, how to identify it, like that you're experiencing that, but also like, what do you do from that point once you realize my gut is telling me I need to make a move? How do you actually build up the courage to go through with it?
So I would say, this kind of goes into the same thing whenever you're experiencing a health issue. Listen to your body. Your body is going to be your best storyteller. It knows what it needs and what it doesn't need. Excuse me. And if you're not happy, if you're dreading getting up in the morning and you're like, oh my God, I got to go to work. Yeah. If you have, and I'm a 3 strikes type of person with a lot of different things in life. And if you wake up 3 days in a row and you're dreading going to work, you might need to start reevaluating stuff, and if you're getting physically ill for no reason, if you're having these nervous butterflies for no reason, like your body is going to tell you. You could be sleeping extra. There's so many different things that your body is going to tell you. But you got to listen. Don't ignore it. Don't ignore it. So many times we always want to ignore it. I mean, this happens with, personal relationships and everything. You want to believe, what you're, you really want to believe the good part, but your heart and your mind are really telling you something else. And, a lot of times hindsight 2020, obviously, but it's like, okay, you really probably saw that and you probably saw things. It's just a matter of putting it together. So yeah, I would just say that. And then once you figure out like, okay, well, maybe there is something, just start doing a little bit of exploring of, if you're have some different interests, start looking into those type of options and reach out to experts. Look at people who are already in that field. Now, don't compare yourself and say, oh my God, I don't think I can get there. Those people have put in, I'm sure, years and years of work to get where they are. But I always say, listen to the experts, because they're experts for a reason. They've been there, they've done that, they've made the mistakes, they've learned the lessons. And so why not learn from them? And maybe there's even people that are close to you that that are in that type of business. Maybe you always wanted to get into real estate. Call up somebody and see what their day-to-day life is like, see what it really is. And I would also say this, never make a rash decision based on emotions. But once you do figure out that something is there, say yes and just figure the details out later. That's basically what I did. I mean, and I am a planner. And that is the crazy part, that all of my close friends and families were surprised. And they're like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I have no idea. Like, I'm a planner. I will do stuff spontaneously, but I like to have, like, once I decide, like, probably get into this. Once I decided to climb Kilimanjaro, like, I was like, all right, I got to make a plan. I got to figure all this out, how I'm going to do this. I had no idea how I was going to pay for it, but I ended up making a plan. I made the decision. I was like, all right, now I got to figure out the details. And that's not always a bad thing.
Right. Yeah. There's so much to unpack there. Like, you just dropped the gem after gem. I love how you talked about, first of all, the relationship. I've never heard that analogy before, where if you're in a relationship and there's red flags, don't ignore those red flags, and making that connection to how that's related to your career, because you are essentially in a relationship with your career or whatever you do for a living. You spend so much time doing it, you're in a relationship. That's a gem right there. I love that. I've never heard it put like that before compared to relationships. So thank you for sharing that. And then learning what other people are doing. This kind of leads to, I definitely want to talk about Kilimanjaro, but everything that led you up to this point, are there people that you learned from as you were in that planning phase of, okay, I took the leap. I don't know what I'm going to do. Now I'm going to start mapping out something. Who did you look to? Who were some of the people that you were like, I like that, I like that? Who are the people that you pulled from as you were mapping out your plan?
That's the one part. So learning from the experts is something that I learned because I didn't do that. Because I didn't I honestly, I had no idea what I was going to do. I didn't know. I knew that I wanted to be able to travel, right? I knew I wanted to be able to have a job that I could travel and go see the world. And joining the health coaching business that I was in and joining the company with Juice Plus and signing on with them, the reason I knew a little bit about that is because my former head coach's wife, that's what she did. And really the only thing I knew about that was that she was able to stay home with both their boys. They had two young boys at the time. And she didn't have to, as long as she had the internet, she could work. And so I was like, okay, well, I can do that for now. It's going to be and I was thinking, okay, well, this will be great for me to be able to pay for all the travel that I want to do. I had enough money saved up, and I have a part in a family business that, my basic necessities are taken care of. But I'm still on that journey of learning, because when I decided to climb the mountain, I had never hiked anything else. I might go on a 3-mile hike or some nice little overlook, gorgeous. I live in the state of Arkansas, so we've got tons of beautiful trails and everything here. It's a gorgeous state. I'd never been higher than 10,000 feet at Sandia Peak in Albuquerque, and we drove that. So I was never a hiker. But once I made the decision that that's what I was going to do, you best believe I was on Google trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do, what all do I need, trying to prepare myself the best way possible. And I guess at that moment, that was really when I started learning about, this is literally just dawning on me. That's probably when it's like, okay, well, that's when I started to understand, to listen to the experts. It was just on the mountain that it really just became clear that that's what I needed to do. And then when I got off, as far as, deciding to get into the speaking business, I sought out people, good old Google, and calling my friends, hey, this is what I think I'm going to do. Do you know anybody? Because I also like having that personal relationship where, even though I might not necessarily know you, but if I have a connection with somebody else, I feel a little bit better. And that's basically how I ended up with self-published in 30 days, because of a mutual friend of mine was a friend of Darren's. And lo and behold, Darren and I have like all different kinds of connections. And so that type of thing just, it makes it comfortable to go with. But yeah, listening to the expert, that was one of those that I learned the lesson. And it's one of those that, like, had I known that, so again, hindsight, had I known that several years ago, maybe things would be different. But then again, it wouldn't be, I wouldn't be where I am right now. So luckily it wasn't a really hard lesson to learn.
Yeah, I like that you touched on both sides of it, because there's a time for trial and error and there's a time for planning. And I think knowing when to deploy one or the other is a skill, right?
Yeah.
And to your point, I kind of feel the same way throughout my journey. It's been almost like there were times where I had no idea what I was doing and people thought I was crazy, but I'm like, no, I know this for a fact. I'm supposed to be doing this. Even if I'm broke right now, even if I'm struggling, I know I'm supposed to be doing this. And then there's a time for coming up with a plan. Like, now that I'm here, I'm going to map this out to get there. So I think that's really cool. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you too is, because like you said, you became an author, you became a speaker. Like, I think there's a level of selflessness there. Like, you clearly wanted to help people, because you could have just, kept traveling the world, making money through the business. Like you said, your friend who was in the business was working at home and, got to spend time, didn't have to clock in anywhere. You could have just kept doing that, but you were like, no, I want to collect these stories. I want to share my voice with people. I want to help people. So was it through your travels? Like, how did that come about where you were like, I want to help people, I want to share my stories?
So that is honestly, that's the biggest thing that I do miss about coaching, college coaching, is being able to help those athletes and seeing them grow and transition. I mean, we get them as 18-year-old kids, and I'm sorry, they are kids. They might be legally adults, but they're still growing up, you know. And then to see them leave when they're 22, 23 years old, and the growth that they've seen, that's the biggest thing that I miss about coaching basketball. And I've always wanted to figure out a way that I could still impact athletes that way. And so when I went to Kilimanjaro, I had hundreds of people asking me about the story, and I loved it. I wanted to be able to tell everybody, but I also didn't want to have an awkward conversation with somebody I went to school with in third grade, and I hadn't talked to them since I was in third. So I did a Facebook Live, and I shared my story, my experience, showed some pictures. I actually did a safari after that, so I talked about that too, and just was very open, honest, told them exactly what happened. There was parts where I was not successful. I got really sick in the Serengeti, had to see a doctor in the middle of the Serengeti. It was hilarious now. I wasn't feeling great then, but just sharing those stories and being authentic and being me. Like I was, not hiding anything. And immediately after I shared all of that, I had people telling me that I needed to share it with more people, and they said I needed to speak about it. My first thought was like, really? Are you sure? And so that's where I reached out to some of my friends who were still in the college athletic world, and who were in the positions of where basically the people who'd bring me in to speak, and ask them their opinion. Like, okay, is this something that you would bring? Is this a story that you would bring somebody in to speak on? And each one of them said yes, absolutely. And I was like, even though it's not, I know we're friends and everything, you can tell me the truth. But they said, no, like, this is something that athletes need to hear. And I was like, great, because I like being able to speak to athletes and hopefully impacting somebody. Just, it really excited me again and gave me the opportunity to be able to be back in that athletic world.
Right. And the great part about it, Jodi, is that now you're able to impact them beyond sports. You know what I mean? You're able to go in there and not just as the coach, like, hey, I'm going to help you win games, but I'm going to help you in life. So
right.
That had to be really cool for it to all come full circle, for you to feel that call to want to give back and still coach. And then for you to step back and return to the world of athletics, but now as someone who's helping them, basically giving them information and sharing stories with them for the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really cool. And obviously, you can still do virtual speaking engagements, but as far as in-person events, because of what's going on in the world right now, a little tough. But what kind of things do you have planned, like, moving forward? I know you and I are working on some projects right now. We'll keep it hush hush until it's officially announced. But what things are you working on, and what can the world expect from Jodi Greve in the coming years?
Well, I've got so basically taking the lessons that I learned on Kilimanjaro and kind of narrowed them down that I think are really key. And I do workshops with athletic teams. It can be, just team specific, or it can be something that's, offered to all of the athletes, and going through figuring out a way for them to be able to conquer their own Kilimanjaro, because everybody has their own Kilimanjaro, whether it's they literally want to go climb Kilimanjaro, or it's a figurative mountain that they're trying to achieve in their athletic life, or in their personal life, their career, whatever it may be, and just working on those steps to get there. And not only to get to the top, I got to Uhuru Peak, which is the top of Kilimanjaro, but I also had to come back down, and I needed to make sure that coming down wasn't just a total crash and burn. And that's what's got to happen whenever you work towards your goals. You work towards your goals and you achieve it, and then it's like, okay, now what do I do? Well, what are you going to be able to do to sustain that? So working on those workshops and working on a workbook to go along with that, because, you know, even though I'm really passionate about athletes, this is something that's really for everyone, no matter where they are in their life. Any type of career doesn't matter, because as you know, everything that we learn in sports, we can relate back to life in a heartbeat, into real life and stuff. So doing that, like you said, the virtual speaking engagements, and hopefully some one-on-one type of stuff, one-on-one type of coaching, to help people conquer their Kilimanjaro.
I love that. And not to get super woo-woo on you, but what I'm hearing is, like, through your travels, through everything that you've done, even the example of Kilimanjaro, you're exploring or pushing forward in the outer world and learning about your inner world as well. And I feel like through your messaging, that's what you get across to people, that it's not just about traveling and having a good time and, you know, drinking a Mai Tai. It's about, like, I'm exploring the world while also simultaneously exploring my inner world, you know? And I think that that's really cool that you do that. And
And it's because I didn't intentionally set out to do that. It's just one of those things that's kind of happened. Like when I climbed Kilimanjaro, I was 40 years old. And whenever I was the first time I met the group of people that I was climbing with, and I said my age, I was like, but this isn't some kind of like midlife crisis type of thing. Like I'm not like, searching for myself or anything. But I mean, you hike a mountain, you're going to learn a thing or 10 about yourself. So
right. There's definitely some soul searching going on, even if it's unintentional. I feel you. Like,
exactly. And it was, I mean, maybe it was subconsciously intentional. I don't know, but I wanted to hike it for a long time. And I was like, dang it, I'm going to do it. So
right.
I did.
Yeah. So I know that you've coached a lot of athletes over the years, and obviously you're, you know, speaking to not just athletes, but the world, at least speaking to everyone. It's funny because when I jumped off here for a second to call you to ask if you could jump on early, I saw a text from a guy that I'm working with, and it made me think, okay, at some point when we get back on here with Jodi, I wanted to make sure I asked you, what advice could you share to athletes right now? And of course, as we both know, this applies to more than just athletes, because there are a lot of people who are in transition, a lot of people who are lost or having to pivot in their lives. But what advice can you give to someone who is in a transition right now and trying to figure out what their next move is? How do they go about, you know, basically carving out a new lane for themselves?
I would say, stay with it and don't give up on it. I know I am a very impatient person. And I've always known that, and I've always tried to work on that. I have gotten better, but it's still one of those things, like I want stuff to happen a little bit faster. And with as much pivot and is having to happen in the world right now, be patient with everything. Enjoy the entire journey that you're going on. Don't just look at the destination of where you're going to, but enjoy the entire journey, the good and the bad. I mean, there's going to be rough patches, but stay patient with it and stay the course, because when you're doing the right things, reaching out to those experts, when you're doing the research on things you possibly might want to do, or if you've already narrowed down your lane to what you do want to do, and stick with that and just keep doing your research and stay with it. Be persistent about it. And, the last year really taught us that stuff is not going to happen fast. You've got to be patient with how things are happening. Be ready for it. And this also happens a lot of times too. It takes real slow. And then all of a sudden, bam, stuff just takes off 100 miles an hour. Well, you got to be ready to when that happens, but enjoy that journey and keep trusting yourself. And as long as you have that feeling like you were saying earlier, like this is what you want to do, then be good with that and stick with it. Cause I think a lot of times, you obviously you got to make sure that you're able to, what's the term I'm looking for? You still got to make sure that you're making a living and, keeping a roof over your head, keeping your mouth fed or whatever. but be willing to make a few of those sacrifices to get to that ultimate destination. And I promise you, if you enjoy that journey while you're on it, especially if it's something that you love and you're passionate about it, when you reach that final, that destination, man, that celebration is going to be better than you could have ever imagined.
That's some strong advice right there. I love how you're talking about, like, okay, sometimes it starts out, well, most of the time it starts out very slow, nothing's happening. You keep chipping away for a couple years, a few years, and then boom, everything takes off. And like you said, you got to be ready for that too, because that is a new world in and of itself. I think they say it takes like 3 to 5 years for the average business to really get going, even to start being profitable at a certain point. So it actually makes me think of another question I wanted to ask you, because a lot of people might be listening to this or, watching this and like, well, that's great, Jodi, that you retired from your coaching career, went off to have this beautiful life and you travel the world and speak and all that. But can you give some advice to the people out there who are like, hey, you know what? I think I want to build something. I think I want to become an entrepreneur and I want to break out of the typical path and go do something on my own and give it a shot. Can you give some advice to those aspiring entrepreneurs out there? What would you tell those people if they're thinking about getting started or following in your footsteps in some way?
Find one of those experts and reach out to them. You'd be really surprised at the people that do respond. I mean, there's going to be a lot of no's. Embrace the no's, because eventually there's going to be somebody that says yes. But I know I don't know how many times I've said this earlier already, but just reach out to people. The internet is full of so much information, and there's people that you can find in all different types of areas of entrepreneurship, because there are so many different avenues that you can take with it. But I would say, try and narrow down, a few lanes, and just start reaching out to people. And if you are, if it's somebody that's coming out of college, especially with athletes have so many resources available to you. Use them. Use them. The university is, they're giving you the opportunity to play the sport that you love and that you're good at. And, there's so many opportunities for you to be able to use them back. And I used to tell my athletes all the time, it's up to you to be able to use those resources. They can't force it on you. But if you're an athlete still in college, go talk to your student advisor, your academic advisor. I know a lot of the bigger schools have more programs set in place for that kind of stuff, but take advantage of it. But the internet is also full of so much free information that you can basically put out a Google search on any little subject, and it's going to take some time, but do the research. But I say go for it, and kind of like I did, just say yes and figure out the details later. They'll
Right.
eventually fall into place.
Yes, indeed. I love that. And to your point, there are so many people, like you said, who are willing to help. It just takes being able to reach out to people. Like I always tell people, if once they're clear on what they want to do and they're in that phase where they're starting to reach out to people who could potentially help bring them up or doing something similar, like you said, like if you reach out to 100 people and one person responds and is willing to essentially take you under their wing and show you how they got to where they got to, sending out those 100 messages, it's worth it. But most people, because of pride or whatever else, they think it won't work. They won't send out those 100 messages. And because of that, they don't build those connections and they end up stuck. And sorry, go ahead.
Just kind of what that is. One of the other big lessons that I learned on the mountain is don't be afraid to ask for help. And like what you said is like not having you can't have the pride. Look, you can't, I don't know anybody who's been able to do everything in their life 100% on their own. It just does not happen. You start a business, you start growing, then you have to bring people in. You got to have helpers. There's nobody that has been able to do it solely on their own. They might think they might have had the idea by themselves, but in order for all of it to fall through, you've got to have help. And if you're in trouble with anything, if you're feeling a certain type of way, ask for help. Put the pride aside and just ask for the help. Because like you said, you have one person that says yes. All you need is one yes. You don't need 100 no's. I used to tell athletes whenever, they're getting all these scholarship offers, that's great that you've got 50 different offers. You can only go to one school. You can only accept one of those scholarships. So all you need is that one person to tell you yes, and you're good.
That's what I'm talking about. See, Jodi, this is why I asked you, I think earlier in the week, I was like, before we get on here, do you want me to interview you or do you want to just give a keynote? Because you're going into keynote mode right now. And I just want to let you keep going and not even ask any questions. So I want to be respectful of your time. You definitely jumped on here early. Before we start to close this thing out, is there any last words you want to share with the people? Any advice to anybody listening right now? Whatever's on your heart, feel free to share.
I would say just for them to go with their heart, even if people tell you that it's crazy, even if people doubt you, if you believe in your heart that you are meant to do something, go for it. Go out and ask the experts. Don't be afraid to ask for help because you're going to need it along the way. And it's okay. Everybody needs help. I don't care what they tell you. They need help. Enjoy the entire journey and not just the destination, because the people that you meet along the way are going to affect your life. And like you were saying earlier, whether it's, to figure out how you do want to do something or how you don't want to do something, and enjoy that and appreciate them and let them know how you appreciate them, because I would not have made it up that mountain. And I am not even joking. If it was not for one of our CEOs, one of our leaders, his name is Moses. I don't know if I would have made it up without him and one of the other girls in particular, Jessica, just because of what they did for me, just verbally, and the encouragement they were giving. They didn't physically have to do anything, but just for them being there. And so I made sure that I was thanking them all the time so that they understood the appreciation that I had for them. And so if you are taking this journey, let people know how much that you do appreciate them, because you never know what that can end up turning into from them. So appreciate the people that are there, go with your heart, enjoy the journey, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
You can go ahead and drop the mic on that one, Jodi. There it is, folks. There it is. Please tell people before we wrap up how they can get in touch with you. I know they call you Jodi the Gypsy because you're constantly traveling the world, inspiring people. But how can people keep up with your journey and just get in touch with you?
So Instagram, I am Instagram and Facebook, I am Jodi the Gypsy. And that is also my website is jodithegypsy.com. And DMing me on Instagram is a great way, or you can email me at Jodi@JodiTheGypsy. And Jodi is spelled with an I. Obviously, my name's on the screen. So, but yeah, Jodi the Gypsy on all of that. So, and I also have. Here's the other thing that I would like to let you know. I have about 11 years ago now. So in 2010, I started texting a group of now former players a motivational quote every day. Some of them were injured. Some of them were just in a bad play, So I started sending a motivational text every day, and it's kind of grown since then. And now if you text the word gypsy, is there a way I can put it on the screen or no? Maybe they can just hear it. It's on, I believe it's on my website too, but if you text 479-469-1677 and you text the word gypsy to that, you'll get a daily motivational quote each morning. And some of them are, a traditional motivational quote. Some of them are from famous figures. Some of them are just a swift kick in the rear to get you to get moving.
That's what I'm talking about.
Cell phone, like the cell phone companies, we used to have a 5-digit code that you could text, but now the way that cell phone companies, they've changed the rules. You can no longer. Oh, perfect. Thank you.
There it is. Thank you, Dana.
Yes. But they make you have the full phone number, and you won't get phone calls or anything if you text it or whatnot. But yeah, now they make us use or wait, it's 479-469.
479-469-1677.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. That's really. I'm glad you got that. I'm gonna have to send you a text afterwards too, so I can get that swift kick in the rear from you every now and then. You know.
Look, sometimes because I get it too, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, let's go.
Right. I love that. I love that. Well, Jodi, thank you again for coming on and sharing. This has been great. Thank you for jumping on early ahead of time. And there it is. There we go.
Yes.
That's the right number, right, Jodi?
Yes. 469. Yep. Perfect.
Okay. As we begin to close out, everybody, please get that number down. Take a screenshot. Write it down. Send Jodi a text. Get your swift kick, folks. You know, make sure you stay on task. Keep it on. Stay on task. Handle your business. But I just want to say thank you. I'm really glad that you and I got connected, and you know, so much value has come from it. Obviously, you came on here and dropped a lot of value today, but even just personally, getting to know you and having conversations with you has brought tremendous value to my life. And I feel like we just met, but we're just getting started in terms of all the projects we're going to be working on together when it comes to athletes and entrepreneurship and travel and all that good stuff. So, sending you my gratitude and my appreciation for everything you do, for the woman that you are, and for all the value that you share with everybody. I appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
All right, you too, Jodi. Bye, everybody. Go get that book. Go get that Thrive After Sports, by the way. All right. Before we wrap up, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for being patient. Dana, thank you for making this happen, for making some magic happen. Despite all the obstacles, we always push through to the end and make sure we get some people on here who can bring value to you guys. As I said, go get that Thrive After Sports book, thriveaftersportsbook.com. And we'll see you next month. We'll be back on March 20th for the next Athlete to Entrepreneur event. And we'll make an announcement about who those panelists are going to be. All right. I love you guys. Have a great weekend. Peace.